The war began not with a bullet, but with a broadcast. Robert De Niro, the legendary Hollywood actor, had never been one to shy away from political commentary. But his latest televised rant was different, more venomous, more direct. Standing on stage at a Hollywood fundraiser, surrounded by a sea of progressive elites clinking their glasses of Dom Perignon, he pointed directly at the camera and spat the words, "Donald Trump is a disease infecting this country, and we need a cure. We need to wake up before we lose everything that makes America great." His voice carried an intensity that was impossible to ignore. The crowd of Hollywood elites erupted into a standing ovation, their claps echoing through the grand hall of the Beverly Hilton. Champagne flutes clinked, murmurs of approval rippled through the room, and high-profile figures whispered among themselves about how important it was to take a stand. Within hours, the speech went viral. Mainstream media picked up the segment and plastered it everywhere. CNN ran a headline, "De Niro calls Trump a national disaster," while MSNBC invited political analysts to dissect the actor's words as if they were scripture. The New York Times published an op-ed titled, "Why Robert De Niro is Right About Trump," written by a well-known political strategist who framed the speech as a wake-up call for democracy. On social media, Hollywood's biggest names quickly fell in line. Meryl Streep, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Mark Ruffalo took to Twitter, resharing De Niro's speech with messages of support. Hashtags like #ResistTrump, #HollywoodAgainstHate, and #StandWithDe Niro trended globally within hours. Late-night comedians took the opportunity to mock Trump relentlessly, replaying De Niro's words and adding their own jabs. But if Hollywood thought the battle was over, they were wrong. Trump, never one to back down from a media fight, fired back with a characteristic scorched earth post on Truth Social. Washed-up actor Robert De Niro, a disgrace to Hollywood, thinks he can lecture real Americans? He's just another puppet of the radical left, funded by the corrupt Dem machine trying to brainwash you through movies and TV. Fake news won't tell you this, but I will. Within minutes, conservative media outlets amplified his response. Fox News launched a prime-time special titled "Hollywood's War Against Trump: The De Niro Factor." Right-wing influencers flooded Twitter, exposing what they called the Hollywood propaganda machine, linking De Niro's speech to a broader conspiracy orchestrated by liberal elites. Sean Hannity dedicated an entire segment to exposing Hollywood's hidden hand in anti-American politics. As the firestorm spread, conservative voices dug deeper. A series of financial reports surfaced, exposing deep ties between Hollywood studios and powerful Democratic donors. Fox Business ran an investigative piece detailing how elite producers had allegedly funneled millions into political super PACs supporting progressive candidates. Tucker Carlson, in his characteristic no-holds-barred style, warned his audience. This isn't just about De Niro. This is a coordinated effort. A network of Hollywood insiders, media executives, and political operatives are working together to condition you, to mold your thoughts, to make you hate your own country. They use movies, TV shows, and celebrities to manipulate you. And the sad part is, most Americans don't even realize it's happening. Meanwhile, Trump's base responded in force. MAGA influencers, conservative YouTubers, and right-wing political commentators launched the hashtag #HollywoodHypocrites, calling out actors for their lavish lifestyles while they preached about saving democracy. Side-by-side images of De Niro speaking out against Trump next to his multimillion-dollar mansions flooded social media. At Trump rallies across the country, the backlash took on a new energy. Supporters held signs reading, "De Niro is a fraud," and "Hollywood hates you." Vendors outside these rallies started selling shirts with slogans like "Boycott Hollywood" and "Keep your politics out of our movies." But as much as Trump's base was energized, Hollywood doubled down. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences issued a rare statement defending De Niro's right to free speech. A-list actors began calling out Trump's response as dangerous rhetoric, warning that his attacks on Hollywood were an attack on art and creativity itself. The feud was no longer just a war of words. It was morphing into a full-scale cultural battle. News outlets ran polls showing that the country was sharply divided on the matter. One survey from Gallup showed that 52% of Americans believe Hollywood had too much political influence, while 48% said actors like De Niro had every right to speak their minds. Then came the bombshell interview. De Niro sat down with Anderson Cooper on CNN for an hour-long exclusive, where he didn't just double down, he escalated. He accused Trump of being a wannabe dictator and suggested that the former president had brainwashed millions of Americans into hating their own democracy. Trump thrives on division. He wants to turn us against each other. And we're letting him do it, De Niro said. It's time we take a stand and tell him he's not welcome in our America. Those words sent shockwaves across the political spectrum. To his supporters, De Niro was a truth-teller. To his critics, he had just declared war on half the country. On Capitol Hill, Republican lawmakers seized on the moment. Senator Ted Cruz and Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene issued statements condemning Hollywood's role in demonizing patriotic Americans. A GOP-led congressional committee announced plans to investigate Hollywood's collusion with left-wing political groups. Meanwhile, Democrats rushed to defend De Niro, praising him as a courageous figure standing up against authoritarianism. The battle lines had been drawn. This was no ordinary celebrity versus politician feud. This was war, a war fought with headlines, tweets, and primetime interviews. And it was only just beginning. The morning after De Niro's CNN interview, Hollywood was abuzz with reaction. Major studios scrambled to publicly align themselves with the actor, with Netflix, Amazon Studios, and Warner Brothers releasing statements reaffirming their commitment to artistic expression and democratic values. Streaming services began curating special playlists featuring De Niro's most iconic films, branding them as part of Hollywood's Resistance collection. But behind closed doors, the industry was in crisis mode. Executives at Disney, Universal, and Paramount convened emergency meetings to discuss how Trump's escalating attacks could impact their bottom lines. Leaked emails from a top studio head revealed concerns that the president's base could organize massive boycotts, potentially costing billions in revenue. If we let Trump frame this as Hollywood versus America, we lose, one email read. We need to control the narrative. To counter Trump's accusations, liberal PACs funneled millions into advertisements portraying Hollywood as a defender of democracy. High-profile directors and actors joined the campaign, appearing in commercials that aired on major networks and streaming platforms. Movies tell our stories. They inspire. They unite. Don't let them be silenced, De Niro himself narrated in one particularly poignant ad. Meanwhile, conservative media continued hammering the Hollywood elite. Tucker Carlson dedicated another night to exposing the Hollywood media-government connection, showcasing financial documents linking major film executives to progressive think tanks and Democratic super PACs. This isn't just entertainment, it's indoctrination, he warned his viewers. As pressure mounted, Trump escalated his counterattack. During a fiery rally in Texas, he addressed the controversy directly. These Hollywood elites think they can tell you what to think, what to believe. But guess what? You, the hardworking people of America, you're smarter than that. You see through their lies. They don't care about you. They care about controlling you. His words electrified the crowd. Chants of boycott Hollywood filled the air. MAGA influencers and right-wing activists picked up the momentum, launching digital campaigns urging Americans to cancel their streaming subscriptions and avoid movies starring woke celebrities. In response, Hollywood fought back harder. The Golden Globes became a political spectacle, with actors using their acceptance speeches to condemn Trump and what they called a rising tide of authoritarianism. De Niro, once again in the spotlight, declared, "This is not just a battle of politics. This is a battle for the soul of America. We cannot let ignorance win." Outside the glamorous world of Hollywood, the tension spilled over into the streets. Protests erupted outside major film studios, with Trump supporters picketing Netflix headquarters, holding signs that read, "Stop brainwashing our kids," and "No more Hollywood lies." The entertainment industry had never seen such direct opposition from a large portion of the population. For the first time in decades, celebrities found themselves under siege, not just by politicians, but by a movement they underestimated. The corporate boardrooms of Hollywood grew increasingly divided. Some executives worried that openly opposing Trump might alienate a massive segment of their audience. Others insisted that standing against him was a moral obligation. Leaked memos revealed internal debates over whether to tone down political messaging in films or double down on activism. Some film projects were quietly shelved, while others were rebranded to seem less overtly political. Then, Trump made his most audacious move yet. He announced the launch of Patriot Productions, a conservative media company aimed at countering Hollywood's influence. Backed by billionaire donors, the initiative promised to fund films and TV shows that celebrated American values, patriotism, and faith. Fox News ran exclusive segments about the project, while Trump supporters flooded social media with excitement. Hollywood scoffed at the idea, dismissing it as a desperate attempt to manufacture conservative-friendly entertainment. But as the first wave of Patriot Productions content rolled out, films emphasizing family, faith, and national pride, it became clear that the cultural war was no longer one-sided. The entertainment landscape was shifting. What had begun as a battle of words was now an economic and cultural showdown. Would Hollywood's dominance withstand the conservative uprising, or was America witnessing the birth of a new entertainment empire? The war was no longer about just one actor or one president. It was about control of narratives, of culture, of the future. As the battle between Hollywood and Trump's movement intensified, America found itself increasingly divided. The entertainment industry, once an unquestioned bastion of influence, was facing the most significant backlash in its history. No longer was this just a war of words between Robert De Niro and Donald Trump. It had transformed into a nationwide ideological conflict with economic, political, and cultural stakes. Determined not to let Trump's attacks go unanswered, Hollywood elites doubled down. Film studios and streaming platforms began injecting political messaging into their content more overtly than ever before. Scriptwriters were encouraged to weave themes of anti-authoritarian resistance into major productions. A-list actors signed an open letter pledging to reject roles in films that catered to conservative audiences. On the award show circuit, the rhetoric against Trump and his supporters became even more aggressive. At the Academy Awards, a number of celebrities took direct swipes at the former president. Meryl Streep, standing before an audience of millions, declared, "This is not about politics anymore. This is about saving the soul of this country from demagogues who use fear as their weapon." Meanwhile, Hollywood studios began financing more explicitly progressive films and documentaries aimed at debunking what they called Trump's cult of disinformation. Major studios announced a slew of projects, including a historical drama portraying a fictionalized version of Trump's presidency through a dystopian lens, and a multi-million-dollar investigative documentary exposing supposed financial ties between Trump's allies and foreign adversaries. The battle wasn't just happening on screens, it was spilling into classrooms. Liberal-leaning educators saw the Hollywood narrative as an opportunity to reshape academic discourse. High schools and universities across the country began incorporating documentaries produced by Hollywood-backed organizations into their curriculums, framing them as essential viewing for understanding modern America. While Hollywood was consolidating its forces, Trump's movement was gathering strength. The launch of Patriot Productions had ignited a firestorm of support among conservatives, and the demand for alternative media surged. Streaming platforms backed by right-leaning investors saw exponential growth, with millions of subscribers canceling their Netflix and Hulu accounts in favor of services that promised pro-American, anti-woke content. More than just entertainment, these conservative networks framed themselves as defenders of traditional American values. The most successful production from Patriot Productions was a historical series titled Founding Fathers: America's Real Legacy, which depicted a hyper-patriotic version of American history free from what conservatives called liberal revisionism. The show became an instant hit among Trump's base, with viewership numbers rivaling those of mainstream Hollywood productions. Beyond media, Trump's influence began seeping into everyday business decisions. Conservative-owned businesses started offering discounts to customers who proved they had unsubscribed from mainstream streaming services. A grassroots movement emerged, pushing for local theaters to boycott Hollywood films, instead screening conservative-backed movies and documentaries. The idea of a parallel America was no longer just a fringe fantasy. It was becoming a reality. While television and film were battlegrounds, social media had become a full-blown war zone. Elon Musk's Twitter, rebranded as X, was at the center of the cultural battle, with Musk positioning himself as an advocate for free speech against Hollywood's leftist propaganda. Trump-aligned influencers flooded the platform, posting viral videos exposing Hollywood's alleged hypocrisy and ties to powerful Democratic donors. Hollywood, in turn, leveraged its own social media forces. Celebrity-endorsed campaigns dominated Instagram and TikTok, urging young audiences to reject Trump's rhetoric and stand for democracy. A-list stars participated in TikTok challenges that promoted voting against Trump, and major influencers received sponsorships from liberal political organizations to create anti-Trump content. The mass media war was no longer confined to the elite circles of Hollywood and Washington. Everyday Americans were forced to pick sides. Families were divided. Thanksgiving dinners turned into battlegrounds where relatives either praised De Niro as a hero or condemned him as an elitist puppet. Friendships ended over social media arguments. Even businesses, from local coffee shops to major brands, had to declare allegiance or risk backlash. By this point, De Niro had become more than an actor. He was a symbol. Trump, too, was no longer just a politician. He was the leader of an ideological rebellion against Hollywood and its entrenched power. Neither man could afford to back down, because the war had become bigger than them. Then came the next bombshell. Trump announced a lawsuit against Hollywood's biggest studios, accusing them of election interference through coordinated political messaging in films and media. The cultural war had just reached a new level, and the final showdown was on the horizon. The moment Donald Trump announced his lawsuit against Hollywood's biggest studios, the country erupted. It was no longer just a war of rhetoric. It had entered the legal battlefield. Trump's legal team, spearheaded by high-profile conservative lawyers, accused major film studios and streaming platforms of election interference through coordinated propaganda. The lawsuit claimed that films, television shows, and even celebrity-endorsed social media campaigns had been strategically designed to sway voters against Trump's political agenda, effectively acting as an extension of the Democratic Party. The entertainment industry dismissed the lawsuit as frivolous, calling it a desperate stunt to silence artistic freedom. Major studio heads released statements asserting that Trump was engaging in a dangerous attack on free speech, attempting to censor filmmakers and actors who had every right to express their views. This is not about propaganda. It's about storytelling, art, and truth, read a press release from Warner Brothers. Despite Hollywood's defiant stance, panic spread behind the scenes. If the lawsuit gained traction, it could open the floodgates for congressional investigations, regulatory crackdowns, and even financial penalties. Industry lawyers scrambled to prepare counterarguments, while public relations teams crafted messaging to frame the lawsuit as an assault on democracy itself. Leading actors and directors took to social media, condemning Trump's move as a dictatorial attempt to control cultural narratives. De Niro, once again at the center of the controversy, held an emergency press conference in front of the TCL Chinese Theater in Los Angeles. "This is insanity," he declared, his voice filled with rage. "We're artists, not politicians. But guess what? If you come after us, we'll fight back. We won't be bullied by a tyrant." While Hollywood was fighting the lawsuit in the media, Trump supporters saw it as a historic moment, proof that their grievances were finally being addressed. Right-wing news outlets declared it a battle for the soul of America, hailing Trump as the only leader bold enough to take on the entertainment industrial complex. Conservative organizations launched donation campaigns to fund legal efforts against Hollywood, while Republican lawmakers announced plans to hold hearings investigating Hollywood's political influence. The lawsuit also had an immediate impact on Hollywood's finances. Stock prices of major entertainment corporations fluctuated wildly as investors feared the possibility of government intervention. Hedge funds began shorting shares of Netflix, Disney, and Paramount, betting that the uncertainty would cause long-term instability. Meanwhile, conservative filmmakers and independent studios saw a golden opportunity. Patriot Productions announced a multi-million-dollar expansion, claiming they were ready to step in and provide an alternative to Hollywood's corrupt monopoly. New streaming services catering to right-leaning audiences surged in popularity, with millions of subscribers signing up in solidarity with Trump's cause. As the lawsuit gained momentum, Republican lawmakers seized the opportunity to investigate Hollywood's ties to Democratic donors. The House Oversight Committee announced hearings on media bias and political collusion, subpoenaing top executives from Disney, Netflix, and Warner Brothers. The hearings were televised nationwide, drawing massive ratings. One of the most explosive moments came when a whistleblower from inside a major studio testified that scripts were frequently altered to fit a progressive agenda, with executives pressuring writers to include anti-Trump messaging. Trump himself took to social media, celebrating the hearings as the beginning of Hollywood's reckoning. For years, they lied, they manipulated, they brainwashed. Now we fight back. Hashtag Hollywood exposed, he posted on Truth Social. Facing mounting pressure, Hollywood mobilized its most powerful allies. Democratic lawmakers denounced the investigations as a dangerous abuse of power and accused Trump of orchestrating a McCarthy-style witch hunt. A group of high-profile celebrities, including George Clooney, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Scarlett Johansson, launched the Artists for Free Expression initiative. The campaign aimed to rally public support against Trump's lawsuit, framing the battle as a fight against authoritarianism. Major television networks aired hour-long specials featuring passionate speeches from actors warning about the dangers of government censorship. At the same time, Hollywood executives worked behind the scenes to protect their industry. Tech billionaires with ties to progressive politics funneled billions into media companies, ensuring that Hollywood studios had the financial backing to withstand any potential losses. Social media platforms, many of which leaned liberal, began flagging pro-Trump narratives about Hollywood as misinformation, further fueling claims of bias from the right. As the legal battle raged on, the conflict spilled into the streets. Mass protests erupted outside Hollywood studios, with Trump supporters demanding an end to leftist propaganda. Clashes broke out between conservative demonstrators and counter-protesters who accused Trump's movement of trying to destroy the arts. Police were called in to control violent altercations outside Netflix's headquarters, where protesters burned DVDs of liberal-leaning films. Meanwhile, Trump's rallies drew record-breaking crowds, with attendees chanting, "Hollywood lies. Trump fights." Merchants at these rallies sold T-shirts and hats with slogans like, "De Niro's a zero" and "Defund Hollywood." The nation had never been more polarized. Mainstream news networks covered the crisis 24/7, turning the Hollywood-Trump war into the most talked-about topic in the country. Some pundits warned that the cultural divide was reaching a dangerous boiling point, with the potential to spiral into something far more destructive. Then, in a stunning turn of events, a federal judge ruled that Trump's lawsuit could proceed to trial. The decision sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry. For the first time in history, Hollywood's biggest studios would have to defend themselves in court against accusations of political manipulation. The ruling also meant that internal communications and financial records would be subject to legal discovery. Hollywood executives panicked at the prospect of their private emails being exposed, fearing the potential for damaging revelations. Speculation ran wild about what might be uncovered: secret deals, hidden financial ties, and possible coordination with political operatives. As the trial loomed, the stakes had never been higher. Would Hollywood survive the onslaught, or was the entertainment empire about to be dismantled? And would Trump's gamble to take on the industry that shaped American culture prove to be his most brilliant move, or his greatest miscalculation? The trial that had captivated the nation finally began, drawing an unprecedented level of media attention. Every major network covered the courtroom drama in real time, turning it into the most-watched event in television history. The stakes were enormous. Trump's team needed to prove that Hollywood studios had deliberately engaged in coordinated election interference, while Hollywood's defense sought to portray the case as an attack on free speech. The courtroom itself became a theater of political warfare. Trump's lawyers presented evidence they claimed proved Hollywood's bias, including leaked emails and internal memos from major studios. Some of the documents showed executives discussing ways to push narratives that would weaken Trump's re-election chances. One of the most explosive pieces of evidence was an email chain between top executives at Netflix and Democratic Party operatives. The email outlined strategies to release politically charged content in the months leading up to the election, ensuring maximum impact. "We have a responsibility to use our influence wisely," one executive wrote. "This election is too important to leave up to chance." Hollywood's legal team fought back, arguing that editorial decisions were protected under the First Amendment. They pointed out that Trump himself had strong media allies in conservative networks, right-leaning film studios, and digital platforms that actively supported his agenda. "If Trump has the right to shape his message, so does Hollywood," argued the lead defense attorney. The trial saw dramatic moments, including a fiery testimony from Robert De Niro, who accused Trump of being a fascist trying to silence dissent. In response, Trump's legal team cross-examined De Niro, forcing him to admit that certain Hollywood productions were, in fact, funded by donors with clear political motivations. The courtroom gasped as De Niro struggled to respond. Outside the courthouse, thousands of protesters gathered, waving signs and chanting slogans in support of their respective sides. News anchors speculated on the long-term consequences of the trial. Would this mark the end of Hollywood's unchecked influence, or would it set a dangerous precedent for government interference in the arts? Social media platforms exploded with conspiracy theories, leaked testimonies, and heated debates. Hashtags like #HollywoodOnTrial and #TrumpVSHollywood trended worldwide. Anonymous whistleblowers from within the industry came forward, adding fuel to the fire. One former executive revealed on a conservative news channel that Hollywood had a shadow council of influential figures who coordinated messaging across multiple platforms. Meanwhile, financial markets reacted sharply. Streaming services saw mass cancellations from both liberal and conservative subscribers, each side accusing the other of trying to manipulate culture. Wall Street analysts predicted a major restructuring within the entertainment industry as investors pulled back from politically charged content. After weeks of testimony and heated debates, the jury finally reached a decision. The verdict: Hollywood was found guilty of coordinated election influence, but not guilty of violating free speech protections. The ruling was unprecedented. While the court acknowledged that Hollywood had actively pushed political messaging, it determined that such actions, while ethically questionable, were not criminal. However, the judge imposed strict transparency regulations on the entertainment industry, requiring full disclosure of political affiliations and donor funding behind major productions. The ruling sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Major studios scrambled to restructure, laying off executives and purging internal communication channels to avoid future scrutiny. Some filmmakers resigned in protest, claiming that the verdict stifled artistic freedom. Others celebrated it as a necessary step toward restoring public trust in media. Trump took to the stage at a massive rally, celebrating what he called one of the biggest wins for the American people. "We took on Hollywood, and we won," he roared to thunderous applause. His supporters cheered, believing the verdict had finally exposed the deep-rooted corruption within the entertainment industry. However, the war had taken its toll. The lawsuit had drained financial resources, led to massive unrest, and further deepened the country's cultural divide. Trump's advisors warned him that while the verdict was a victory, it had also made him an even bigger target for retaliation. Hollywood was wounded, but not defeated. In the shadows, a coalition of media moguls, Silicon Valley billionaires, and high-profile celebrities began plotting their next move. Just when the nation thought the war was over, Robert De Niro made an unexpected announcement. In a dramatic turn of events, De Niro revealed that he had secured billions in private funding to launch an independent media empire, one that would be explicitly designed to counter Trump's influence. "We are going to rebuild Hollywood stronger, bolder, and more powerful than ever before," he declared. "And we will never let a demagogue like Trump dictate our stories." Within weeks, De Niro's new media conglomerate, Liberty Studios, was fully operational. With streaming platforms, news outlets, and film production houses under its control, it promised to create content that would stand against authoritarianism and fight for progressive values. Meanwhile, conservative media leaders warned that this was just the beginning of a new battle. If Trump thinks he won, he's mistaken. De Niro just changed the battlefield, one commentator warned. As the dust settled, one thing became clear. The fight for America's cultural soul was far from over. The courtroom battle had only been the opening act. The real war, the war for influence over the minds of the people, was just beginning. As the credits rolled on the first chapter of this epic media war, both sides braced for the next phase. Would Trump's movement succeed in dismantling Hollywood's dominance? Or would De Niro's counterstrike reshape the industry in his own image? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain. This was a story far from over.